In 1777, the American Revolution hangs by a thread. British forces occupy major cities, while the Continental Army struggles with dwindling supplies and wavering loyalty among the colonies. The dream of independence feels fragile. Across the Atlantic, European powers watch with skepticism. Many believe the rebellion is a fleeting moment, destined to be crushed by the might of the British Empire. Hope is dim, and despair looms large. In London, British leaders devise a bold strategy to end the war decisively. They plan to sever New England from the rest of the colonies, isolating the heart of the rebellion and striking a fatal blow. At the center of this ambitious plan stands General John Burgoyne, a confident and aristocratic officer. He believes that British power will easily overwhelm colonial resistance, and he is determined to lead the charge. Burgoyne's plan hinges on a massive three-pronged advance along the Hudson River corridor. If successful, the British will cut off New England from its allies, dismantling the rebellion piece by piece. As Burgoyne prepares for this bold offensive, the Continental Army remains beleaguered. Supplies are scarce, morale is low, and the unity among the colonies is fragile, with many still uncertain about independence. The stakes are high, and the tension palpable. Burgoyne's confidence contrasts sharply with the anxiety felt by the American rebels. The outcome of this conflict could determine the fate of an entire nation. As the British forces mobilize, whispers of discontent spread among the colonies. The desire for freedom clashes with the fear of retribution, creating a volatile mix that could ignite or extinguish the rebellion. The looming threat of Burgoyne's advance weighs heavily on the minds of the rebel leaders. They know that if New England falls, the rebellion may crumble, leaving the remaining colonies vulnerable to British control. As the British march closer, the question remains, can the Continental Army rally together in time to defend their cause? The fate of the revolution hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of collapse. With the British poised to strike and uncertainty gripping the colonies, the stage is set for a confrontation that will test the resolve of both sides. What will become of the rebellion as the storm approaches? In the summer of 1777, General John Burgoyne leads a formidable army south from Canada, his confidence radiating through the ranks. British regulars, German auxiliaries, and Loyalist supporters march with precision, their uniforms gleaming in the sunlight. Burgoyne's plan is ambitious, aiming to split the rebellious colonies by controlling the Hudson River. Bands play martial music as supplies flow in long, organized columns, creating an air of triumph and inevitability. Yet, the American wilderness soon reveals its challenges. Roads disappear into thick forests and mud bogs down supply wagons, slowing Burgoyne's advance. The landscape becomes a treacherous adversary. As the army presses on, local resistance intensifies. Patriot militias spring up, harassing British troops with guerrilla tactics. Each skirmish reveals the growing resolve of those fighting for independence. Burgoyne's supply lines stretch dangerously thin. What was meant to be a coordinated assault becomes a solitary thrust into hostile territory, as other British forces fail to arrive as planned. Despite the setbacks, Burgoyne remains resolute, convinced that his well-trained army will crush the rebellion. He underestimates the resolve of the Americans, who are now keenly aware of his movements. As days pass, the harsh realities of the campaign become undeniable. The once proud army, laden with supplies, now faces hunger and fatigue, the morale of the troops beginning to wane. Burgoyne's optimism begins to falter as he receives reports of increased American troop movements. The wilderness, once a path to victory, now feels like a tightening noose around his forces. The British Army, once a symbol of imperial strength, now finds itself isolated and vulnerable. The Americans, emboldened by their knowledge of Burgoyne's struggles, prepare for their next move. Burgoyne's grand design, intended to deliver a decisive blow, is now a precarious gamble. The American forces, watching closely, sense an opportunity to turn the tide of the conflict. As the summer sun begins to set on Burgoyne's campaign, the stage is set for a confrontation that will alter the course of the war. The wilderness holds its breath, waiting for the clash. As General Horatio Gates assumes command of the Northern forces, a sense of urgency fills the air. He is a man in his late 40s, tall with a sturdy build, sharp blue eyes, and a weathered face that speaks of experience. Gates understands the stakes. Burgoyne's isolation presents an unprecedented opportunity for the Americans to rally and strike back. Benedict Arnold, a man in his 30s with dark hair and a determined expression, emerges as a critical figure. His fiery spirit ignites the troops, urging them to embrace the fight. Arnold's reputation as a bold leader grows, and he becomes a symbol of the American resolve against the British forces. Militia from neighboring colonies flood into the area, their numbers swelling the ranks of the Continental Army. These men, dressed in a mix of homespun clothing and worn uniforms, bring with them a fierce determination. The spirit of unity against a common enemy begins to take root, transforming the landscape of the battlefield. As the British columns advance, American sharpshooters take to the trees. Hidden among the branches, they become ghosts in the forest, targeting British officers and artillery crews. The element of surprise becomes their greatest weapon, disrupting the enemy's movements and sowing chaos in their ranks. The fighting style shifts dramatically. Gone are the formal lines of European warfare. Instead, the Americans adapt to their surroundings. Every tree becomes a shield, every ridge a vantage point. The battlefield morphs into a rugged terrain where guerrilla tactics thrive, and the Americans find strength in their knowledge of the land. As morale rises among the Continental troops, the sense of desperation begins to fade. The realization that they can turn the tide of battle invigorates the soldiers. What was once a fight for survival transforms into a pursuit of victory, and the spirit of rebellion surges through the ranks. Gates and Arnold coordinate their strategies, utilizing the terrain to their advantage. The Americans dig in and fortify their positions, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Their resolve solidifies, and the sense of a looming battle hangs heavy in the air as they anticipate Burgoyne's next move. The British forces, unaware of the trap being laid, continue their advance, their confidence unshaken. Yet, the Americans watch closely, ready to exploit any weakness. The tension builds as the two armies draw closer, the wilderness thickening around them like a coiling serpent. As the days pass, the Americans grow increasingly confident. They sharpen their skills in the art of ambush, practicing their marksmanship and honing their tactics. Each encounter with the British serves to strengthen their resolve, and the once fractured forces begin to coalesce into a formidable fighting unit. With each passing day, the realization dawns that Saratoga is no longer just a retreat point. It is a battleground where the tide of the war may shift. The Americans prepare not only to defend but to strike back with newfound vigor as hope begins to blossom. The stage is set for a confrontation that could alter the course of the revolution. With Burgoyne's forces isolated and the Americans adapting to the circumstances, the air is thick with anticipation. The battle for Saratoga looms, and both sides brace for the clash that will determine their fates. As September 1777 dawns, the air is thick with tension. General Burgoyne, a man in his late 40s with a commanding presence, leads his troops toward Freeman's farm, unaware of the American defenses waiting in the dense woods ahead. The British forces, well-equipped and confident, march in tight formation. Their drums echo through the forest, a stark contrast to the quiet anticipation of the American soldiers concealed among the trees, ready to strike. As Burgoyne orders his men forward, musket fire erupts from the American positions. The sound reverberates through the woods, shattering the morning calm and sending shockwaves through the British ranks. The British advance falters under the relentless fire. Burgoyne, his face etched with concern, realizes that the Americans have prepared meticulously for this encounter, and their resolve is unyielding. Benedict Arnold, a fiery leader in his 30s with a determined gaze and a scar on his cheek, pushes his men to exploit the confusion. He defies orders, rallying troops to counterattack with fervor. The fighting at Freeman's farm is brutal and chaotic. Both sides suffer losses, but the Americans hold their ground, their morale bolstered by the realization that they can stand against the British might. As the day wears on, Burgoyne's forces are pushed back, their lines wavering. The British, once so confident, now face the grim reality of a determined enemy that refuses to yield. Despite the inconclusive outcome, the psychological impact of the battle is profound. For the first time, Burgoyne questions his assumptions about the campaign and the strength of the American resolve. The day closes with both armies regrouping, but the Americans are emboldened. They have tasted victory, however small, and the British have begun to feel the weight of their overconfidence. As night falls, the sounds of the battlefield give way to an uneasy silence. Both sides know that the fight is far from over, and the stakes have never been higher. Freeman's farm has become a battleground that will echo through history. The clash here marks a turning point, igniting a fierce determination in the American cause that will carry forward into the next confrontation. As October dawns, the American forces fortify their position along Bemis Heights. Earthworks rise swiftly, built by determined soldiers, their faces smeared with dirt and sweat, embodying the urgency of their mission. The high ground offers a strategic advantage. Artillery pieces are carefully positioned, their barrels peering through the trees, ready to rain fire on any advancing British troops attempting to breach the defenses. General Burgoyne, now acutely aware of dwindling supplies, contemplates his next move. His once polished uniform is now stained and tattered, reflecting the strain of leadership under dire circumstances. On October 7th, Burgoyne orders a desperate assault. British troops, weary yet resolute, march forward, their red coats a stark contrast against the autumn foliage, embodying the weight of their mission. As the British attack begins, Arnold, sidelined by a clash with Gates, defies orders. His fierce resolve drives him to the front lines, his eyes blazing with determination to reclaim the momentum. The American lines surge forward, emboldened by Arnold's leadership. They unleash a torrent of gunfire, their muskets firing in unison, creating a cacophony that echoes through the trees. British formations begin to falter under the relentless American counterattacks. The once proud redcoats struggle to maintain cohesion, their morale shaken by the unexpected ferocity of the resistance. Key redoubts fall to the Americans, the tide of battle shifting dramatically. Each victory fuels the spirits of the colonial soldiers, who now sense that victory is within their grasp. Burgoyne watches in despair as his carefully laid plans unravel. The realization that his army is losing ground weighs heavily on him, a stark contrast to his earlier confidence. As the day wears on, the American forces press their advantage. The sound of cannon fire and the cries of battle fill the air, a testament to the fierce struggle unfolding on the heights. The battle rages on, and the outcome hangs in the balance. The Americans, emboldened by their success, prepare for another assault, their spirits high as they sense the tide turning in their favor. As October unfolds, General Burgoyne's once mighty British army finds itself ensnared in the wilderness of New York. The lush landscape, once an ally, now becomes a relentless adversary, closing in around them. Food supplies dwindle, and the morale of Burgoyne's troops begins to erode. Once proud and confident, they now face the bitter reality of hunger and isolation, their spirits dimming with each passing day. Burgoyne, a man of noble bearing with sharp features and dark hair, ponders his options. The weight of command bears down on him as he considers the possibility of escape or a desperate negotiation with the Americans. American forces, emboldened by their recent victories, tighten their grip around Burgoyne's encampment. The sound of distant drums and the sight of colonial banners signal a growing confidence among the besieging troops. Desertions plague Burgoyne's ranks as soldiers, once loyal, slip away into the night. Fear and despair ripple through the camp, and whispers of surrender begin to circulate among the remaining men. The relentless rain transforms the camp into a mire, further complicating any plans for movement. Burgoyne's once proud army, now reduced to a ragtag collection of weary men, struggles against nature and their own dwindling resolve. Burgoyne receives word of American advances, and the realization dawns that retreat is no longer an option. The wilderness that had once seemed an ally now serves as a cage, trapping his forces in a tightening grip. As the days stretch on, Burgoyne's leadership is put to the test. The weight of command becomes a burden, and the prospect of surrender looms ever larger, overshadowing the glory he once envisioned. The encirclement of Burgoyne's army becomes a symbol of the shifting tides in the American Revolution. The once unthinkable notion of defeat now takes root in the minds of British soldiers. With each passing hour, the inevitability of surrender looms larger. The wilderness, once a barrier, now stands as a testament to the resolve of the American forces, tightening their grip around Burgoyne's fate. As dawn broke on October 17, 1777, the air was heavy with tension. General John Burgoyne, weary and disheveled, stood before his encircled army, knowing that surrender was imminent. His once proud forces, now diminished and demoralized, awaited their fate under the watchful eyes of American soldiers. The British soldiers, clad in tattered red uniforms, marched out of their encampment, their faces a mix of resignation and disbelief. They stacked their arms in front of the American lines, a symbol of their defeat. The sound of clattering muskets echoed through the valley, marking a moment that would change the course of the war. American troops, a diverse mix of farmers and soldiers, stood in awe as they witnessed the surrender. Among them, General Horatio Gates, a tall man with a commanding presence, surveyed the scene with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. This victory was not just military, it was a profound shift in morale for the Continental Army. As Burgoyne approached Gates to formally surrender, the atmosphere shifted. The weight of the moment pressed down on both men. Burgoyne, once confident and proud, now appeared defeated, his uniform dusty and his shoulders slumped. Gates, embodying the spirit of resilience, extended his hand in a gesture of both respect and victory. The surrender ceremony unfolded with a somber dignity. American soldiers, still in disbelief, watched as Burgoyne's men laid down their arms. The sight of the once feared British army, now subdued, sent ripples of hope through the ranks of the Continental Army. This was a moment they had fought hard to achieve. With the surrender complete, the implications of this victory began to resonate far beyond the battlefield. News of Burgoyne's defeat would soon travel across the Atlantic, igniting a spark of hope among other nations observing the struggle. The American Revolution was no longer just a rebellion. It was a movement gaining momentum. For the American soldiers, the victory at Saratoga was a moment of reckoning. They had faced insurmountable odds and emerged triumphant. The cheers erupted from the ranks as they celebrated their hard-won achievement, the sound echoing through the hills, a testament to their resolve and unity. Yet, amidst the jubilation, a sense of caution lingered. The reality of the war was far from over. As Burgoyne's army surrendered, the Continental Army understood that this victory must be built upon. The struggle for independence would require continued sacrifice and determination. As the day drew to a close, Burgoyne's surrender marked a pivotal moment in the American struggle for independence. The path ahead was uncertain, but the resolve of the Continental Army had been solidified. They had proven that they could stand against the might of the British Empire. With the surrender of Burgoyne's forces, the American Revolution entered a new chapter. This victory would not only bolster the spirits of the rebels, but also attract the attention of foreign powers, altering the very fabric of the conflict. The world was watching. The news of Burgoyne's surrender at Saratoga spreads like wildfire across the Atlantic. In Paris, salons buzz with excitement, as intellectuals and diplomats recognize the shift in momentum. The once bleak prospects for American independence now glimmer with hope. French officials, long skeptical of American chances, begin to see the revolution as a viable cause. King Louis XVI, influenced by his advisors, contemplates sending military support, understanding the potential to weaken Britain's global dominance. In the months that follow, France formally recognizes the United States, signing the Treaty of Alliance in 1778. This pivotal moment transforms the American Revolution into an international conflict, drawing in resources and troops. As French ships set sail for America, the Continental Army, led by General George Washington, prepares to welcome new allies. The arrival of French troops and supplies invigorates the weary soldiers, who now see a path toward victory. The British, now facing a broader conflict, must divert their resources to defend against threats in the Caribbean and India. The war expands, stretching British forces thin across multiple fronts. In the colonies, the news of French support ignites a fervor among the populace. Towns celebrate with parades, and the spirit of revolution surges as more men enlist to fight for independence. As the conflict escalates, the American Revolution becomes a symbol of hope for oppressed peoples worldwide. News of the fight for liberty inspires uprisings and movements in Europe and beyond, challenging established powers. The victory at Saratoga not only secured American independence, but also redefined the global balance of power. The revolution now stands as a beacon of possibility, altering the course of history. In the years that follow, the American struggle for independence will continue, but the seeds planted at Saratoga have taken root. The revolution is no longer a solitary fight. It is a global movement. As the world watches, the American Revolution evolves into a defining moment in history. It is a testament to the power of resilience and the belief that a united people can change their fate.